Ayrton Senna wasn't just a Formula One driver. He was a legend behind the wheel, a three-time world champion who seemed almost untouchable on the track. But tragedy struck on May 1st, 1994, at the San Marino Grand Prix. Leading the race as always, Senna's car suddenly veered off course at 135 miles per hour, slamming into a retaining wall. In an instant, the sport lost one of its greatest heroes at just 34 years old. The heartbreak didn't end there. When rescue workers searched his car, they found an Austrian flag. Senna had planned to wave it in honor of Roland Ratzenberger, a fellow driver who had died just the day before. It was a moment that shook the entire world of racing. Jules Bianchi. Jules Bianchi was more than just a promising driver. He was seen as Ferrari's golden prospect, a young talent destined for greatness. But fate had other plans. In 2014, he was behind the wheel for Marussia at Suzuka, a race remembered for its brutal rain and fading daylight. With just a few laps left, Adrian Sutil had already crashed and a recovery vehicle was on the track to clear the wreck. That's when tragedy struck. Bianchi lost control, skidding straight into the digger. The impact caused a devastating brain injury, and though he fought for months, he never woke up. 9 months later, the motorsport world mourned the loss of a future star, gone far too soon. Dale Earnhardt Sr. The 2001 Daytona 500 ended in heartbreak when NASCAR legend Dale Earnhardt lost his life in a crash that millions witnessed live on TV. With just a half mile to go, Earnhardt was running third, working to block competitors and protect the lead of his teammates, including his own son. At 180 miles per hour, contact with Sterling Marlin sent him spinning into Ken Schrader before slamming head-on into the retaining wall. The impact was instantly fatal. Fans were stunned, but Earnhardt's death became a turning point for the sport. NASCAR launched a major safety overhaul, introducing advanced head and neck devices, a safety research center, and new rules. Since then, remarkably, no driver has died in NASCAR's top 3 series. Dan Wheldon. It was the 11th lap of the 2011 IZOD IndyCar World Championship when disaster struck. 2 cars made contact, sparking chaos on the track. One machine went flying, another slammed into the wall, and in seconds, a massive 15-car pileup unfolded. Caught in the middle of it all was Dan Wheldon. Traveling at full speed, his car launched into the air, flipped violently, and crashed into the catch fence before coming to rest upside down. The impact left him critically injured and unable to escape. He was airlifted to the hospital, but tragically did not survive. The race was stopped immediately, and in a touching tribute, Wheldon was placed at the top of the final standings. Gilles Villeneuve. Gilles Villeneuve had already proven his talent by completely dominating the Formula Atlantic Championships in 1976, sweeping titles in both the US and Canada. His fearless, all-or-nothing style made him a fan favorite, but it also came with risks. In 1982, during qualifying for the Belgian Grand Prix at Zolder, tragedy struck. Pushing hard at over 120 miles per hour, Villeneuve's Ferrari clipped a slower car. The impact launched him into the air before his car slammed down, flipping violently across the track. The crash was so severe that Villeneuve was thrown from the wreckage, marking a heartbreaking end to his legendary career. Wolfgang von Trips. The 1961 Italian Grand Prix at Monza will forever be remembered as one of Formula One's darkest days. Ferrari's Wolfgang von Trips, locked in battle on the track, collided with a young Jim Clark. The crash was catastrophic. Von Trips' car was launched into the crowd, killing him instantly and leaving 15 spectators dead, with many others injured. The tragedy shocked the entire racing world. It wasn't just another accident, it was a turning point. From that moment, Formula One could no longer ignore the dangers faced by fans as well as drivers. The disaster sparked major safety overhauls, leading to bigger runoff zones and stronger barriers designed to keep the sport thrilling, but far safer. Scott Kalita. On June 21, 2008, drag racing legend Scott Kalita went through what would become one of the sport's darkest days. During a qualifying run at Old Bridge Township Raceway in Englishtown, New Jersey, his engine suddenly exploded while he was flying down the strip at top speed. To make it worse, his parachute didn't open, leaving him with no way to slow down. His car, swallowed in flames, kept rocketing forward until it smashed into a concrete wall with devastating force. The crash was fatal, taking the life of a two-time NHRA champion who had already carved his name deep into racing history. Ronnie Peterson. The 1978 Italian Grand Prix will forever be remembered for its heartbreaking tragedy. The drama began right at the start when an overly eager official waved the green flag before all the cars were properly lined up. What followed was pure chaos, a massive 9-car pileup that sent machines colliding and debris flying. Among the drivers caught in the wreck was Ronnie Peterson, one of Formula One's brightest stars. His car erupted in flames, but he managed to escape, suffering only burns and broken legs. Then came the cruelest twist. Officials blocked access to the crash site, keeping medics away for precious minutes. That delay cost Peterson his life, turning a racing weekend into a devastating loss. Adam Petty. On May 12, 2000, tragedy struck NASCAR when 19-year-old Adam Petty, the fourth generation of the legendary Petty racing family, lost his life during a practice run at New Hampshire Motor Speedway. Considered the sport's bright future, Adam was just beginning to carve out his own path in racing when disaster unfolded. As he came around the track, he suddenly lost control of his car and slammed hard into the wall. The impact was fatal, killing him instantly, just weeks before his 20th birthday. Fireball Roberts. Glenn Fireball Roberts was at the height of his career in 1964 when disaster struck at the World 600 in Charlotte. On the 7th lap, after Ned Jarrett and Junior Johnson tangled, Roberts swerved to avoid them but lost control. His car spun, slammed backward into the wall, flipped, and erupted into a massive fireball as the ruptured fuel tank fed the flames. The inferno was so intense that fans and drivers were horrified, watching as Jarrett bravely pulled him from the wreck. Roberts had burns covering 80% of his body and was rushed to the hospital, where he fought to survive for 6 agonizing weeks. Sadly, complications set in, and Fireball Roberts passed away on July 2nd. Joaquin Rindt. At Monza during the Italian Grand Prix weekend, Joaquin Rindt stood as the clear championship favorite, already leading the standings with confidence. But during qualifying, fate dealt a cruel blow. His car veered off and slammed into a guardrail that had been poorly installed. Instead of protecting him, the barrier failed and the car slid underneath. Rindt suffered fatal injuries, and Formula One lost one of its brightest talents in an instant. Yet what followed was both heartbreaking and historic. As the season unfolded, no rival managed to surpass his points tally. When it was all over, Joaquin Rindt was crowned Formula One World Champion, the only driver in history to win the title posthumously. Joe Weatherly. Joe Weatherly was one of NASCAR's brightest stars, a two-time champion in 1962 and 1963, known just as much for his wild personality as his skill behind the wheel. But his story took a tragic turn on January 19, 1964, at Riverside International Raceway. While racing at the peak of his career, his head slipped outside the car and struck a retaining wall, killing him instantly. Weatherly had refused to wear a shoulder harness or use a window net, fearing he might get trapped in a fire. That decision proved fatal. At only 41, the reigning champion was gone, becoming the only defending NASCAR points champion to lose his life during a race. Eddie Sachs. Eddie Sachs, famously called the Clown Prince of auto racing, was as much a showman as he was a driver. Known for his jokes and stunts, he brought color to the track, but his career came to a devastating end on May 30th, 1964 at the Indianapolis 500. While battling through the race, his car, still fueled by gasoline, unlike many rivals who had switched to safer alternatives, crashed and erupted in a fiery explosion. The impact killed Sachs instantly in one of Indy's most horrifying accidents. His death changed the sport forever, as officials quickly introduced new safety rules, including mandatory pit stops, effectively ending the dangerous practice of running cars on gasoline during the race. Roger Williamson. In just his second Formula One race, Roger Williamson faced a nightmare crash that still haunts racing fans today. A sudden tire failure sent his car flipping and bursting into flames, trapping him upside down. Williamson was alive, shouting for help, but the marshals on scene were untrained, unequipped, and stood frozen. That's when fellow driver David Purley became the hero of the moment. He stopped his car, ran through the flames, and desperately tried to rescue Williamson, pulling, pushing, even begging the marshals to help. No one stepped in. Other drivers sped past, and the fire crew took 8 long minutes to arrive. By then, Williamson had tragically died, while millions watched the horror unfold live on TV. Don McTavish. Don McTavish was just 28 when he made his big NASCAR debut at Daytona in 1969, but tragedy struck almost immediately. On only the 9th lap, he collided with Bob James and was sent careening into the outside wall. The worst part? He hit a gap in the barrier, smashing head-on into the exposed concrete. The impact was catastrophic. His car was torn completely in half, and the engine flew more than 100 feet down the track. Spectators were stunned as one of the most violent crashes in NASCAR history unfolded before their eyes. Though McTavish survived the initial wreck, fate was cruel. He was struck by another car moments later, sealing his tragic end.